Good afternoon, good time of the day to all participants of our wonderful online marathon dedicated to reading the scriptures and to the benefit of the world. To all our well-wishers, we wish good mood. Please connect us, read, listen, and share with others, because it's time of great changes. And the main change, of course, happens in our faiths when we change our consciousness. If you want to change our faith, we should intensify our intelligence with spiritual energies, and then intelligence will change our fate, because our thinking influences greatly on our fate. And intelligence is a function which both can progress or degrade. Can it let us? Intelligence, it's very vulnerable function. But Vedas say that we have intelligence in order to question about the absolute truth. So it's time to question. This is a very great time. Animals don't have such kind of opportunity to question, although they have the same soul, but now they have lower level desires. That is why they have such kind of bodies and consciousness. If we have if we are very lucky, we have a human body, now we can to transform our consciousness finally, totally, in order to not to get new bodies, because body is karma, is burden, suffering, wilting, old age, death, and again birth. Everything is connected with body, and we have intelligence in order to get out of these mazes, body mazes. And the best medicine is to question about the God, about our relationship. And intelligence intensify and clue to these divine plots, which are eternal, and thus we change our fate. That is why we read the scriptures, in order to people can hear talk round about the God, and it will be enough to transform their lives, and the first small seeds will be sown with the help of reading and listening the scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam. So I wish you good race. So we will continue reading Srimad Bhagavatam. And by the mercy, causeless mercy, divine mercy of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, we can do these revolutionary actions in our faiths. So we have an example, we take an example from him. He left Vrindavan. It's the best place in the world, very spiritual place. Old age and sages go there in order to finally finish their life. And in Vrindavan, everyone who leave body there in Vrindavan, he go to the spiritual world, even the more sinner. But it isn't very easy to go there. And Srila Prabhupada left Vrindavan and went to the West in order to give to us this precious message of Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's try to thank him, reading, learning, and spreading this Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world. So let's read good prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Sarasvati Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudire Nashtapraesha Padrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishsiki. Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto, which is called Creation. Chapter 8, Prayers by Queen Kunti. Suta Goswami said, praise by Queen Kunti and Parikshit saved. Chapter called like this. Suta Goswami said, thereafter the Pandavas, desiring to deliver water to the dead relatives who had desired it, went to the Ganges with Draupadi. The ladies walked in front. Having lamented over them and sufficiently over Ganges water, they bathed in Ganges, whose water is sanctified due to being mixed with the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord. There sat the king of the Kurus, Maharaja Yudhishthira, along with his younger brothers and Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, Kunti and Draupadi, all overwhelmed with grief. Lord Krishna was also there. Citing the stringent laws of the Almighty and their reaction upon living beings, Lord Shri Krishna and the Munis began to pacify those who were shocked and affected. The clever Duryodhana and his partly cunning usurped the kingdom of Yudhishthira, who had no enemy. But the grace of the Lord, the recovery was executed, and the unscrupulous kings who joined with Duryodhana were killed by him. Others also died, their duration of life having decreased for their rough handling of the hair of the Queen Draupadi. Lord Shri Krishna caused 3 well-performed Ashvametha Yagyas, horse sacrifices, to be conducted by Maharaja Yudhishthira, and thus caused the virtuous fame to be glorified in all directions, like that of Indra, who had performed 100 such sacrifices. Lord Shri Krishna then prepared for his departure. He invited the son of Pandu, after having been worshipped by the Brahmanas, headed by Srila Vyasadeva. The Lord also reciprocated greetings. As soon as he seated himself on the chariot to start for Dwaraka, he saw Uttara hurrying toward him in fear. Uttara said, O Lord of Lords, Lord of the universe, you are the greatest of mystics. Please protect me, for there is no one else who can save me from the clutches of death in this world of duality. O my Lord, you are all-powerful. A fiery iron arrow is coming towards me fast. My Lord, let it burn me personally if you so desire, but please do not let it burn and abort my embryo. Please do me this favor, my Lord. Suta Goswami said, having patiently heard her words, Lord Shri Krishna, who is always very affectionate to his devotees, could at once understand that Ashvathama, the son of Dronacharya, had thrown the Brahmastra to finish her last life in the Pandava family. O foremost among the great thinkers, Munis, Shunaka, seeing the glaring Brahmastra proceeding towards them, the Pandavas took up their 5 respective weapons. The Almighty Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, having observed that a great danger was befalling his unalloyed devotees, who were fully surrendered souls, at once took up his Sudarshana disc to protect them. The Lord of Supreme Mysticism, Sri Krishna, resides within everyone's heart as the Paramatma. As such, just to protect the progeny of the Kuru dynasty, he covered the embryo of Uttara by his personal energy. O Shaunaka, glory of Puru's family, all of the supreme Brahmastra weapon released by Ashvathama was irresistible and without check of counteraction it was neutralized and foiled when confronted by the strength of Vishnu, Lord Krishna. O Brahmanas, do not think this to be especially wonderful in the activities of the mysterious and infallible personality of Godhead. By his own transcendental energy, he creates, maintains, and annihilates all material things, although he himself is unborn. Thus, saved from the radiation of the Brahmastra, Kunti, the chaste devotee of the Lord, and her 5 sons and Draupadi addressed Lord Krishna as he started for home. Shrimati Kunti said, O Krishna, I offer my obeisances unto you, because you are the original personality and are unaffected by the qualities of the material world. You are existing both within and without everything, yet you are invisible to all. Being beyond the range of limited sense perception, you are the eternally irreproachable factor covered by the curtain of the deluding energy. You are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized. You yourself descend to propagate the transcendental science of devotional service onto the hearts of the advanced transcendentalists and mental speculators, who are purified by being able to discriminate between matter and spirit. How then can we women know you perfectly? Let me therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who has become the son of Vasudeva, the pleasure of Devaki, the boy of Nanda, and the other cowherd man of Vrindavana, and the enlivener of the cows and the senses. My respectful obeisances are unto you, O Lord, whose abdomen is marked with a depression like a lotus flower, who are always decorated with garlands of lotus flowers, whose glance is as cool as the lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses. O Hrishikesha, master of the senses and lord of lords, you have released your mother Devaki, who was long imprisoned and distressed by the envious king Kamsa, and me and my children from a series of constant dangers. My dear Krishna, your lordship has protected us from a poisoned cake, from a great fire, from cannibals, from a vicious assembly, from suffering during our exile in the forest, and from the battle where great generals fought. And now you have saved us from the weapon of Ashvathama. I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again, so that we could see you again and again. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated births and deaths. My lord, your lordship can easily be approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feeling. My obeisances are unto you, who are the property of the materially impoverished. You have nothing to do with the actions and reactions of the material moods of nature. You are self-satisfied, and therefore you are the most gentle and are master of the monists. My lord, I consider your lordship to be eternal time, the supreme controller without beginning and end, and all-pervasive one. In distributing your mercy, you are equal to everyone. The dissensions between living beings are due to social intercourse. O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and so are misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial. Of course, it's bewildering, O soul of the universe, that you work though you are inactive, and that you take birth though you are the vital first and the unborn. You yourself descend amongst animals, men, sages, and aquatics. Verily, this is bewildering. My dear Krishna, Yashoda took up a rope to bind you when you committed an offense, and your Petub's eyes overflooded with tears which washed the mascara from your eyes. And you were afraid, though fear personified is afraid of you. This sight is bewildering to me. Some say that the unborn is born for the glorification of pious kings, and others say that he is born to please King Yadu, one of your dearest devotees. You appear in his family as sandalwood appears in the Malaya hills. Others say that since both Vasudeva and Devaki prayed for you, you have taken your birth as their son. Undoubtedly, you are unborn, yet you take birth for their welfare and to kill those who are envious of the demigods. Others say that the world, being overburnt like a boat at sea, is much aggrieved, and that Brahma, who is your son, prayed for you, and so you have appeared to diminish the trouble. And yet others say that you appeared for the sake of rejuvenating the devotional service of hearing, remembering, worshipping, and so on, in order that the conditioned soul suffering from material pangs might take advantage and gain liberation. O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities or take pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. Are you leaving us today, though we are completely dependent on your mercy? You have no one else to protect us, now when all kings are at enmity with us. At the name and fame of a particular body is finished with the disappearance of the living spirit, similarly, if you do not look upon us, all our fame and activities, along with the Pandavas and Yadu, will end at once. O Gadadhara, Krishna, our kingdom is now being marked by the impressions of your feet, and therefore it appears beautiful. But when you leave, it will no longer be so. All these cities and villages are flourishing in all respects because the herbs and grains are in abundance, and trees are full of fruits, and rivers are flowing, and hills are full of minerals, and the oceans full of wealth. And this is all due to you glancing over them. O Lord of the universe, soul of the universe, O personality of the form of the universe, please, therefore, sever my tie of affection for my kinsmen, the Pandavas and the Vrishnis. O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. O Krishna, O friend of Arjuna, O chief amongst the descendants of Vrishni, you are the destroyer of those political parties which are disturbing elements of this earth. Your prowess never deteriorates. You are the proprietor of the transcendental abode, and you descended to relieve the distresses of the cows and brahmanas and the devotees. You possess all mystic power, and you are the prospect of the entire universe. You are the Almighty God, and I offer you my respectful obeisances. Sutta Goswami said, the Lord, thus hearing the praise of Kunti Devi, composed in choice words for his glorification, mildly smiled. That smile was an enchanting as his mystic power. Thus, accepting the praise of Srimati Kunti Devi, the Lord subsequently informed other ladies of his departure by entering the palace of Hastinapura. But upon preparing to leave, he was stopped by King Yudhishthira, who implored him lovingly. King Yudhishthira, who was much aggrieved, couldn't be convinced. Despite instruction by great sages headed by Vyasa and the Lord Krishna himself, they perform of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence, Yudhishthira, son of the Dharma, overwhelmed by the death of his friends, was aggrieved just like a common materialistic man. O sages, thus deluded by affection, he began to speak. King Yudhishthira said, O my Lord, I am the most sinful man. Just see my heart, which is full of ignorance. This body, which is ultimately meant for others, has killed many phalanxes of man. I have killed many boys, brahmanas, well-wishers, friends, parents, preceptors and brothers. Though I live millions of years, I will not be released from the hell that awaits me for all these sins. There is no sin for a king who kills for the right cause, who is engaged in maintaining his citizens. But this injunction is not applicable to me. I have killed many friends of women, and I have thus caused enmity to such an extent that it's not possible to undo it by material welfare work. As it's not possible to filter muddy water through mud or purify a wine-stained pot with wine, it's not possible to counteract the killing of man by sacrificing animals. The ending of the 8th chapter, chapter 9, the passing away of Bhishma Deva in the presence of Lord Krishna. Suta Goswami said, being afraid for having killed so many subjects on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Maharaja Yudhishthira went to the scene of the massacre. There Bhishma Deva was lying on a bed of arrows about to pass away. At that time, all his brothers followed him on beautiful chariots drawn by first-class horses decorated with gold ornaments. With them were Vyasa and rishis like Kaumya, the learned priest of the Pandavas, and others. O sage, amongst the Brahmanas, Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, also followed, seated on a chariot with Arjuna. Thus King Yudhishthira appeared very aristocratic, like Kuvera surrounded by his companions, like Guhyakas. Seeing him, Bhishma, lying on the ground like a demigod fallen from the sky, the Pandava king Yudhishthira, along with his younger brothers and Lord Krishna, bowed down before him. Just to see the chief of the descendants of King Bharata, Bhishma, all the great souls in the universe, namely the rishis amongst the demigods, brahmanas and kings, all situated in the quality of goodness, were assembled there. All the sages like Parvata Muni, Narada, Dhaumya, Vyasa, the incarnation of God, Brihadashva, Bharadvaja, and Parashurama and disciples, Vasishtha, Indra Pramada, Trita, Gritsamada, Asita, Kakshivan, Gautama, Atri, Kaushika, and Sudarshana were present, and many others like Shukadeva Goswami and other purified souls, Kashyapa and Angiras and others, all accompanied by their respective disciples, arrived there. Bhishma Deva, who was the best amongst the 8 Vasus, received and welcomed all the great and powerful rishis who were assembled there, for he knew perfectly all the religious principles according to time and place. Lord Shri Krishna is situated in everyone's heart, yet he manifests his transcendental form by his internal potency. This very Lord was sitting before Bhishma Deva, and since Bhishma Deva knew of his glories, he worshipped him duly. The sons of Maharaja Pandu were sitting silently nearby, overtaken with affection for their dying grandfather. Seeing this, Bhishma Deva congratulated them with feeling. There were tears of ecstasy in his eyes, for he was overwhelmed by love and affection. Bhishmadeva said, "Oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustice you good souls suffer for being the sons of religion personified. You didn't deserve to remain alive under those tribulations. Yet you were protected by the Brahmanas, God, and religion. As far as my daughter-in-law, Kunti, is concerned, upon the great General Pandu's death, she became a widow with many children, and therefore she suffered greatly. And when you were grown up, she suffered a great deal also because of your actions. In my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time under whose control everyone in every planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by the wind." Oh, how wonderful is the influence of inevitable time. It's irreversible. Otherwise, how can there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhishthira, the son of the demigod controlling religion? Bhima, the great fighter with a club, the great bowman Arjuna with his mighty weapon Gandiva, and above all the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas. O king, no one can know the plan of the Lord Shri Krishna. Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. O best among the descendants of Bharata Yudhishthira, I maintain therefore that all this is within the plan of the Lord. Accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, you must follow it. You are now the appointed administrative head, and my Lord, you should now take care of those subjects who are now rendered helpless. This Sri Krishna is no other than the inconceivable original personality of Godhead. He is the first Narayana, the supreme enjoyer, but he is moving amongst the descendants of King Vrishni, just like one of us, and he is bewildering us with his self-created energy. O King, Lord Shiva, Narada, the sage amongst the demigods, and Kapila, the incarnation of Godhead, all know very confidentially about his glorious, though direct contact. O King, that personality whom out of ignorance only you thought to be your maternal cousin, your very dear friend, well-wisher, counselor, messenger, benefactor, etc., is that very personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Being the absolute personality of Godhead, he is present in everyone's heart. He is equally kind to everyone, and he is free from the false ego of differentiation. Therefore, whatever he does is free from material inebriety. He is equibalanced. Yet, despite his being equally kind to everyone, he has graciously come before me while I'm ending my life, for I am his unflinching Savita. The personality of Godhead who appears in the mind of the devotee by attentive devotion and meditation, and by chanting of the holy name, releases the devotee from bondage of fruitive activities at the time of his quitting the material body. May my Lord, who is four-handed, and whose beautifully decorated lotus face with eyes as red as the rising sun is smiling, kindly await me at the moment when I quit this material body. Sutta Goswami said, Maharaja Yudhishthira, after hearing Bhishmadeva speak in that appealing tone, asked him, in the presence of all the great rishis, about the essential principles of various religious duties. At Maharaja Yudhishthira's inquiry, Bhishmadeva first defined all the classification of castes and orders of life in terms of the individual's qualifications. Then he systematically, in twofold divisions, described counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. He then explained by divisions acts of charity, charity, the pragmatic activities of a king, and activities for salvation. Then he described the duties of women and devotees, both briefly and extensively. Then he described the occupational duties of different orders and stages of life, citing instances from history, for he was himself well acquainted with the truth. While Bhishmadeva was describing occupational duties, the sun's course ran onto the northern hemisphere. This period is desired by mystics who die at their will. Thereupon that man who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings, and who fought on thousands of battlefields and protected thousands of men, stopped speaking, and being completely freed from all bondage, withdrew his mind from everything else and fixed his wide open eyes upon the original personality of Godhead Shri Krishna, who stood before him, four-handed, dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shined. By pure meditation, looking at Lord Shri Krishna, he at once was freed from all material and auspiciousness, and was relieved of all bodily pains caused by the arrow wounds. Thus, all the external activities of his senses at once stopped, and he prayed transcendentally to the control of all living beings while quitting his material body. Bhishmadeva said, "Let me now invest my thinking, feeling, and willing, which were so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties, in the all-powerful Lord Shri Krishna. He is always self-satisfied, but sometimes, being the leader of the devotees, he enjoys transcendental pleasure by descending to the material world, although from him only the material world is created." Shri Krishna is the intimate friend of Arjuna. He has appeared on his earth in his transcendental body, which resembles the bluish color of the tamala tree. His body attracts everyone in the three planetary system, upper, middle, and lower. May his glittering yellow dress and his lotus face, covered with paintings and sandalwood pulp, be the object of my attraction, and may I not desire fruitive results. On the battlefield, where Shri Krishna attended Arjuna out of friendship, the flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen due to the dust raised by the hoofs of the horses, and because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. All this decoration, intensified by the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows, were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go on to Shri Krishna. In obedience to the command of his friend, Lord Shri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhana. And while there he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by his looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed upon that Krishna. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. Fulfilling my vows and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on that way. May he, Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who awards salvation, be my ultimate destination. On the battlefield he charged me, as if angry because of the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows. His shield was scattered, and his body was smeared with blood due to the wounds. At the moment of death, let my ultimate attraction be to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. I concentrate my mind upon the chariot drive of Arjuna, who stood with a whip in his right hand and a bridle rope in his left, who was very careful to give protection to Arjuna's chariot by all means. Those who saw him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained the original forms after death. Let my mind be fixed upon Lord Shri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of Vrajadhama, the gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the Rasa dance. At the Rajasuya Yagya performed by Maharaja Yudhishthira, there was the greatest assembly of all the elite men of the world, the royal and learned orders, and in that great assembly Lord Shri Krishna was worshipped by one and all as the most exalted personality of Godhead. This happened during my presence, and I remember the incident in order to keep my mind upon the Lord. Now I can meditate with full concentration upon one Lord Shri Krishna, now present before me, because now I have transcended the misconceptions of duality in regard to his presence in everyone's heart, even in the hearts of the mental speculator. He is in everyone's heart. The sun may be perceived differently, but the sun is one. Sutta Goswami said, thus Bhishmadeva merged himself in the super soul Lord Shri Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions, and thus he became silent, and his breathing stopped. Knowing that Bhishmadeva had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute, all present there became silent like birds at the end of the day. Thereafter, both man and demigod sounded drums in honor, and the honest royal order commands demonstrations of honor and respect, and from the sky fell showers of flowers. A descendant of Phrugu Shaunaka, after performing funeral rituals for the dead body of Bhishmadeva, Maharaja Yudhishthira was momentarily overtaken with grief. All the great sages then glorified Sri Krishna, who was present there by confidential Vedic hymns. Then all of them returned to their respective hermitages, bearing always Lord Shri Krishna within their hearts. Thereafter, Yudhishthira at once went to his capital Hastinapura, accompanied by Lord Shri Krishna, and there he consoled his uncle and aunt Gandhari, who was an ascetic. After this, the great religious king Maharaja Yudhishthira executed the royal power in the kingdom strictly according to the codes of royal principles approved by his uncle and confirmed by Lord Shri Krishna. At the end of the 9th chapter, Chapter 10, Departure of Lord Krishna for Dwaraka. Shaunaka Muni asked, after killing his enemies who desired to usurp his rightful inheritance, how did the greatest of all religious men, Maharaja Yudhishthira, assisted by his brothers, rule his subjects? Surely he couldn't freely enjoy his kingdom with unrestricted consciousness. Sutta Goswami said, Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is maintainer of the world, became pleased after re-establishing Maharaja Yudhishthira in his own kingdom and after restoring the Kuru's dynasty, which had been exhausted by the bamboo fire of anger. Maharaja Yudhishthira, after being enlightened by what was spoken by Bhishmadeva and Lord Shri Krishna, the infallible, engaged himself in matter of perfect knowledge because all his misgivings were eradicated. Thus he ruled over the earth and seas and was followed by his younger brothers. During the reign of Maharaja Yudhishthira, the clouds showered all the water that people needed, and the earth produced all the necessities of man in profusion. Due to its fatty milk bag and cheerful attitude, the cow used to moisten the grazing ground with milk. The rivers, oceans, hills, mountains, forests, creepers, and active drugs in every season paid their tax quarter to the king in profusion. Because of the kings having no enemy, the living beings were not at any time disturbed by mental agonies, diseases, or excessive heat or cold. Shri Hari, Lord Shri Krishna, resides at Hastinapura for a few months to pacify his relatives and please his own sister, Subhadra. Afterwards, when the Lord asked permission to depart and the king gave it, the Lord offered his respects to Maharaja Yudhishthira by bowing down at his feet, and the king embraced him. After this, the Lord, being embraced by others and receiving their obeisances, got into his chariot. At that time, Subhadra, Draupadi, Kunti, Uttara, Gandhari, Dhritarashtra, Yuyutsu, Kripachari, Nakula, Sahadeva, Bhimasena, Dhaumya, and Santyavati all nearly fainted because it's impossible for them to bear separation from Lord Krishna. The intelligent who have understood the Supreme Lord in association with pure devotees and have become freed from bad materialistic association can never avoid hearing the glories of the Lord, even though they have heard them only once. How then could the Pandavas tolerate his separation? For they had been intimately associated with his person, seeing him face to face, touching him, conversing with him, and sleeping, sitting, and dining with him. All these hearts were melting for him on the port of attraction. They looked at him without blinking their eyes, and they moved hither and thither in perplexity. The female relatives, whose eyes were flooded with tears out of anxiety for Krishna, came out of the palace. They could stop their tears only with great difficulty. They feared that tears could cause misfortune at the time of departure. While the Lord was departing from the palace of Hastinapura, different types of drums like the mridanga, thola, nagara, dhundhuri, and dundubhi, and flutes of different types, the veena, gamukha, and bheri, are sounded together to show him honor. Out of a loving desire to see the Lord, the royal ladies of the Kurus got up on the top of the palace and, smiling with affection and shyness, they showered flowers upon the Lord. At that time, Arjuna, the great warrior and conqueror of sleep, who is the intimate friend of the most beloved Supreme Lord, took up an umbrella which had a handle of jewels and was embroidered with lace and pearls. Uddhava and Satyaki began to fan the Lord with decorated fans, and the Lord, as the master of Madhu, seated on a scattered flowers, commanded them along the road. It was being heard here and there that the benedictions being paid to Krishna were neither befitting nor befitting because they were all for the Absolute, who was now playing the part of a human being. Absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is sung in select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastinapura began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. They said, "Here he is, the original personality of Godhead as we definitely remember him. He alone existed before the manifested creation of the moods of nature. And in him only, because he is the Supreme Lord, all living beings merge. As if sleeping at night, their energy suspended. The personality of Godhead, again desiring to give names and forms to his parts and puzzles, the living entities placed them under the guidance of material nature. By his own potency, material nature is empowered to recreate. Here is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose transcendental form is experienced by the great devotees, who are completely cleansed of material consciousness by dint of a rigid devotional service, and full control of life and the senses. And this is only way to purify existence. Oh, dear friends, here is that very personality of Godhead whose attractive and confidential pastime are described in the confidential parts of Vedic literature by his great devotees. It is he only who creates, maintains, and annihilates the material world, and yet remains unaffected. Whenever there are kings and administrators living like animals in the lowest moods of existence, the Lord in his transcendental form manifests his supreme power. The truth positive shows special mercy to the faithful, performs wonderful activities, and manifests various transcendental forms as is necessary in different periods and ages. Oh, how supremely glorified is the dynasty of King Yadu, and how virtuous is the land of Mathura, where the supreme leader of all living beings, the husband of the goddess of fortune, has taken his birth and wandered in his childhood. Undoubtedly, it is wonderful that Dwarka has defeated the glories of the heavenly planets and has enhanced the celebrity of the earth. The inhabitants of Dwarka are always seeing the soul of all living beings, Krishna, in his loving feature. He glanced at them and favors them with sweet smiles. Oh, friends, just think of his wives, though hence he has accepted. How they must have undergone vows, baths, fires, sacrifices, and perfect worship of the Lord of the universe to constantly relish now the nectar of his lips by kissing. The damsels of Vrajabhumi would often faint just by expecting such favors. The children of these ladies, Pradyumna, Samba, Amba, etc., ladies like Rukmini, Satyabhama, and Jambavati, were forcibly taken away by him from their Swayamvara ceremonies after he defeated many powerful kings, headed by Shishupala, and other ladies were also forcibly taken away by him after he killed Bhamasura and thousands of his assistants. All of these ladies are glorious. All these women auspiciously glorify their lives despite their being without individuality and without purity. Their husband and lotus-eyed personality of Godhead never left them alone at home. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. While the ladies of the capital Hastinapura were greeting him and talking in this way, the Lord, smiling, accepted their good greetings and, casting the grace of his glance over them, he departed from the city. Maharaja Yudhishthira, although no one's enemy, engaged 4 divisions of defense, horse, elephant, chariot, and army, to accompany Lord Krishna, the enemy of the Asuras, them demons. The Maharaj did this because of the enemy and also out of affection for the Lord. Out of profound affection for Lord Krishna, the Pandavas, who were of the Kuru dynasty, accompanied him a considerable distance to see him off. They were overwhelmed with the thought of future separation. The Lord, however, persuaded them to return home, and he proceeded towards Dwaraka with his dear companions. O Shaunaka, the Lord then proceeded towards Kurujangala, Panchala, Shurasena, the land on the bank of the river Yamuna, Brahmavarta, Kurukshetra, Matsya, Sarasvata, the province of the desert and the land of scanty water. After crossing these provinces, he gradually reached the Suvira and Abhira provinces. Then, west of this, reached Dwaraka at last. On his journey, though these provinces, he was welcomed, worshipped, and given various presentations. In the evening, in all places, the Lord suspended his journey to perform evening rites. This was regularly observed after sunset. the ending of the 10th chapter. Chapter 11. Lord Krishna's entrance into Dwaraka. Suta Goswami said, upon reaching the border of his most prosperous metropolis, known as the country of Anarthas Dwaraka, the Lord sounded his auspicious counsel, heralding his arrival and apparently pacifying the dejection of the inhabitants. The wild and fat bold conch shell being gripped by the hand of Lord Krishna and sounded by him, appeared to be reddened by the touch of his transcendental lips. It seemed that a white swan was playing in the stems of red lotus flowers. The citizens of Dwaraka, having heard the sound which threatens fear personified in the material world, began to run towards him fast, just to have a long-desired audience with the Lord, who is the protector of all devotees. The citizens arrived before the Lord with their respective presentations, offering them to the fully satisfied and self-sufficient one, who is his own potency, incessantly supplied others. These presentations were like the offering of a lamp to the sun. The citizens began to speak in ecstatic language to receive the Lord, just as words welcome their guardian and fathers. The citizens said, O Lord, you are worshipped by all demigods like Brahma, the four Sanas, and even the King of Heaven. You are the ultimate rest for those who are really aspiring to achieve the highest benefit of life. You are the supreme transcendental Lord, and inevitable time cannot exert its influence upon you. O Creator of the universe, you are our Mother, well-wisher, Lord, Father, spiritual Master, and worshipable deity. By following in your footsteps, we have become successful in every respect. We pray, therefore, that you continue to bless us with your mercy. Oh, it's our good luck that we have come again today under your protection by your presence. For your Lordship rarely visits even the denizens of heaven. Now it's possible for us to look into your smiling face, which is full of affectionate glances. We can now see your transcendental form full of all auspiciousness. O lotus-eyed Lord, whenever you go away to Mathura, Vrindavan, or Hastinapura to meet your friends and relatives, every moment of your absence seems like millions of years. O infallible one, at that time our eyes become useless, as if bereft of sun. O Master, if you live abroad all the time, then we cannot look at your attractive face, whose smiles vanquish all our sufferings. How can we exist without your presence? Upon hearing their speeches, the Lord, who is very kind to the citizens and the devotees, entered the city of Dwaraka and acknowledged all their greetings by casting his transcendental glance over them. As Bhagavati, the capital of Nagaloka, is protected by the Nagas, so was Dwaraka protected by the descendants of Vrishni, Bhoja, Madhu, Dashartha, Arha, Kukara, Anthaka, and etc., who were as strong as Lord Krishna. The city of Dwaraka was filled with opulence of all seasons. There were hermitages, orchards, flower gardens, parks, and reservoirs of water breeding lotus flowers all over. The city gateway were household doors, and fastened arches along the roads were all nicely decorated with festival signs like plantain trees and mango leaves, all to welcome the Lord. Flags, garlands, and painted signs and slogans all combined to shade the sunshine. The highways, subways, lanes, markets, and public meeting places were all thoroughly cleansed and then moistened with scented water. And to welcome the Lord, fruits, flowers, and unbroken seeds were strewn everywhere. In each and every door of the residential houses, auspicious things like curb, unbroken fruits, sugar cane, and full water pots with articles for worship, incense and candles were all displayed. On hearing that the most dear Krishna was approaching Dwaraka Dhama, magnanimous Vasudeva, Akrura, Ugrasena, Balarama, the superhumanly powerful, Pradyumna, and Samba, the son of Jambavati, all extremely happy, abundant resting, sitting, and dining. They hastened toward the Lord of Chariots with Brahmanas bearing flowers. Before them were elephants, emblems of good fortune. Conch shells and bugles were sounded, and Vedic hymns were chanted. Thus they offered their respects, which were saturated with affection. At the same time, many hundreds of well-known prostitutes began to proceed on various vehicles. They were all very eager to meet the Lord, and their beautiful faces were decorated with dazzling earrings, which enhanced the beauty of their foreheads. Expert dramatists, artists, dancers, singers, historians, genealogists, and learned speakers all gave their respective contributions, being inspired by the superhuman pastimes of the Lord. Thus they proceeded on and on. Lord Shri Krishna approached them and offered due honor and respect to each and every one of the friends, relatives, citizens, and all other who came to receive the welcome hymn. The Almighty Lord greeted everyone present by bowing his head, exchanging greetings, embracing, shaking hands, looking and smiling, giving assurance and awarding benedictions, even to the lowest in rank. Then the Lord personally entered the city accompanied by elderly relatives and invalid brahmanas with their wives, all offering benedictions and singing the glories of the Lord. Others also praised the glories of the Lord. When Lord Krishna passed over the public roads, all the ladies from the respective families of Dwaraka went up to the roofs of their places just to have a look at the Lord. They considered this to be the greatest festival. The inhabitants of Dwaraka were regularly accustomed to look upon the reservoir of all beauty, the infallible Lord, yet they were never satisfied. The Lord's chest is the abode of the goddess of fortune. His moon-like face is the drinkless vessel for eyes, which hanker after all that is beautiful. His arms are the resting places for the administrative demigods. All his lotus feet are the refuge of pure devotees who never talk or sing of any subject except his lordship. As the Lord passed along the public road of Dwaraka, his head was protected from the sunshine by a white umbrella. White feathered fans moved in semi-circled and showers of flowers fell upon the road. His yellow garments and garlands of flowers made it appear as if a dark cloud was surrounded simultaneously by sun, moon, lightning, and rainbows. After entering the house of his father, he was embraced by his mother's present, and the Lord offered his obeisances unto them by placing his head at their feet. The mothers were headed by Devaki, his real mother. The mothers, after embracing their son, set him on their laps. Due to pure affection, milk sprang from their breasts. They were overwhelmed with delight, and the tears from their eyes wetted the Lord. Thereafter the Lord entered his palaces, which were perfect to the fullest extent. His wives lived in them, and they numbered over 16,000. The queens of Lord Shri Krishna rejoiced with their minds to see their husband home after a long period abroad. The queens got up at once from their seats and meditations. As was socially apparently customary, they covered their faces shyly and looked about coyly. Their insuperable ecstasy was so strong that the queens who were shy first embraced the Lord in the innermost recesses of their hearts. Then they embraced him visually, and then they sent their sons to embrace him, which is equal to personal embracing. But, O chief amongst the Purus, though they try to restrain their feelings, they inadvertently shed tears. Although Lord Sri Krishna was constantly by their sides, as well as exclusively alone, his feet appeared to them to be newer and newer. The goddess of fortune, although by nature always restless and moving, couldn't quit the Lord's feet. So what woman can be detached from those feet, having once taken shelter of them? The Lord was pacified after killing those kings who were burdensome to the earth. They were puffed up with their military strength, their horses, elephants, chariots, infantry, etc. He himself wasn't a part in the fight. He simply created a hostility between the powerful administrators, and they fought amongst themselves. He was like the wind which caused friction between bamboos and so sparks of fire. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, out of his causeless mercy, appeared on this planet by his internal potency and enjoyed himself amongst competent women as if he were engaged in mundane affairs. Although the queen's beautiful smiles and furtive glances were all spotless and exciting, and although they could conquer Cupid himself by making him give up his bow in frustration, and although even the tolerant Shiva could fall victim to them, still, despite all their magical feats and attractions, they couldn't agitate the senses of the Lord. The common materialistic conditioned souls speculate that the Lord is one of them. Out of their ignorance, they think that the Lord is affected by matter, although he is unattached. This is the divinity of the personality of Godhead. He is not affected by the qualities of material nature, even though he is in constant with them. Similarly, the devotees who have taken shelter of the Lord do not become influenced by the material qualities. The simple and delicate women truly thought that Lord Sri Krishna, their beloved husband, followed them and was dominated by them. They were unaware of the extent of the glories of their husband, as the atheists are unaware of him as their supreme controller. It's the ending of the 11th chapter. Chapter 12. Birth of Emperor Parikshit. The sage Shunaka said, "The womb of Uttara, mother of Maharaja Parikshit, was spoiled by the dreadful and invincible Brahmastra weapon released by Ashwatthama. But Maharaja Parikshit was saved by Supreme Lord. How was the great Emperor Parikshit, who was a highly intelligent and great devotee, born in that womb? How did his death take place, and what did he achieve after his death? We all respectfully want to hear about him, Maharaja Parikshit, to whom Shukadeva Goswami imparted transcendental knowledge. Please speak on this matter." Sri Suta Goswami said, "Emperor Yudhishthira administrated generously to everyone during his reign. He was exactly like his father. He had no personal ambition and was freed from all sorts of sense gratification because of his continuous service unto the lotus feet of the Lord Sri Krishna. You even reached the celestial planets about Maharaja Yudhishthira worldly possessions, the sacrifices by which he would attain a better destination, his queen, his stalwart brothers, his extensive land, his sovereignty over the planet Earth, his fame, etc. O Brahmanas, the opulence of the king was so haunting that the denizens of heaven aspires for it. But because he was absorbed in the service of the Lord, nothing could satisfy him except the Lord's service. O son of Buru, when the child Parikshit, the great fighter, was in the womb of his mother Uttara and was suffering from the burning heat of the Brahmastra, he could observe the Supreme Lord coming to him. He, the Lord, was only thumb high, but he was all transcendental. He had a very beautiful, blackish, unfallible body, and he wore a dress of lighting yellow and a helmet of blazing gold. Thus he was seen by the child. The Lord was enriched with 4 hands, earrings of molten gold, and eyes blood red with fury. As he loitered about, his club constantly encircled him like a shooting star. The Lord was thus engaged in vanquishing the radiation of the Brahmastra, just as the sun evaporates a drop of dew. He was observed by the child, who thought about who he was. While thus being observed by the child, the Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead, the Supersoul of everyone, and the protector to the righteous, who stretches in all directions and who is unlimited by time and space, disappeared at once. Thereupon, when all the good signs of the zodiac gradually evolved, the heir apparent of Pandu, who would be exactly like him in powers, took birth. Yudhishthira, who was very satisfied with the birth of Maharaja Parikshit, had the purificatory process of birth performed. Learned Brahmanas headed by Dhaumya and Kripa recited auspicious hymns. Upon the birth of a son, the king, who knew how, where and when charity should be given, gave gold, land, villages, elephants, horses, and good food, grains to the Brahmanas. The learned Brahmanas, who were very satisfied with the charities of the king, addressed him as the chief amongst the Purus and informed him that his son was certainly in the line of descent from the Purus. The Brahmana said, "The spotless son has been restored by the all-powerful and all-pervasive Lord Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, in order to oblige you. He was saved when he was doomed to be destroyed by an irresistible supernatural weapon. For this reason, the child will be known in the world as one who is protected by the personality of Godhead. O most fortunate one, there is no doubt that this child will become a first-class devotee and will be qualified with all good qualities." The good king Yudhishthira inquired, "O great souls, will he become as a saintly king, as pious in his very name, as famous and glorified in his achievements as others who appeared in this great royal family?" The learned Brahmana said, "O son of Pritha, this child shall be exactly like King Ikshvaku, son of Manu, in maintaining all those who are born. And as for following the Brahmanical principles, especially in being true to his promise, he shall be exactly like Rama, the personality of Godhead, the son of Maharaja Dasharatha. This child will be a munificent donor of charity and protector of the surrendered, like the famous king Shibi of the Ushinara country, and he will expand the name and fame of his family like Bharata, the son of Maharaja Dushayanta. Amongst great bowmen, this child will be as good as Arjuna. He will be as irresistible as fire and as unsurpassable as the ocean. The child will be as strong as a lion and as worthy as a shelter of the Himalaya mountains. He will be forbearing like the earth, as tolerant as his parents. This child will be like his grandfather Yudhishthira or Brahma in equanimity of mind. He will be magnificent like the Lord of the Kailasa hill Shiva, and he will be the resort of everyone like the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana, who is even the shelter of Goddess of Fortune. This child will be almost as good as Lord Shri Krishna by following in his footsteps. In magnanimity, he will become as great as King Krantideva, and in religion he will be like Maharaja Yayati. This child will be like Bali Maharaj in patience, a staunch devotee of Lord Krishna like Prahlada Maharaja, a performer of many Ashwamedha horse sacrifices, and a follower of the old experienced man. This child will be the father of kings who will be like sages. For world peace and for the sake of religion, he will be the chastise of the upstarts and the quarrelsome. After hearing about his death, which will be caused by the bite of a snake bird sent by a son of a Brahmana, he will get himself freed from all material attachment and surrender to the personality of Godhead, taking shelter of him. After inquiring about proper self-knowledge from the son of Vyasadeva, who will be a great philosopher, he will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness. Thus, who were expert in astrological knowledge and in performance of the birth ceremony instructed King Yudhishthira about the future history of his child. Then, being simultaneously remunerated, they all returned to their respective homes. So his son would become famous in the world as Parikshit, examiner, because he would come to examine all human beings in his search after that personality whom he saw before his birth. Thus he would come to constantly contemplate him. As the moon in its waxing fortnight develops day after day, so the royal prince Parikshit very soon developed luxuriantly under the care and full facilities of his guardian grandfathers. Just at this time, King Yudhishthira was considering performing a horse sacrifice to get freed from sins incurred from fighting with kinsmen. But he became anxious to get some wealth, for there were no surplus funds outside of fines and tax collection. Understanding the hearty wishes of the king, his brothers, as advised by the infallible Lord Krishna, collected sufficient riches from the north. By those riches, the king could procure the ingredients for 3 horse sacrifices. Thus, the pious King Yudhishthira, who was very fearful after the battle of Kurukshetra, pleased Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. Lord Shri Krishna, being invited to the sacrifice by Maharaja Yudhishthira, saw to it that they were performed by qualified, wise-born Brahmanas. After that, for the pleasure of the relatives, the Lord remained a few months. O Shaunaka, thereafter, the Lord, having bade farewell to King Yudhishthira, Draupadi, and other relatives, started for the city of Dwaraka, accompanied by Arjuna and other members of the Yadu dynasty. The ending of The 12th chapter, chapter 13, Dhritarashtra's quits home. Shri Sutta Goswami said, while traveling on a pilgrimage, Vidura received knowledge of the destination of the self from the great sage Maitreya and then returned to Hastinapura. He became as well versed in the subject as he desired. After asking various questions about and becoming established in the transcendental loving service of Lord Krishna, Vidura retired from putting questions to Maitreya Muni. When they saw Vidura return to the palace, all the inhabitants, Maharaj Yudhishthira, his younger brother Dhritarashtra, Satyaki, Sanjaya, Kripachari, Kunti, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, Uttara, Kripi, many other wives of the Kauravas and other ladies with children are hurried to him in great delight. It so appeared that they had regained their consciousness after a long period. With great delight, they all approached him as if life had returned to their bodies. They exchanged obeisances and welcomed each other with embraces. Due to anxieties and long separation, they all cried out of affection. King Yudhishthira then arranged to offer sitting accommodation and a reception. After Vidura simultaneously and took sufficient rest, he was comfortably seated. Then the king began to speak to him, and all who were present there listened. Maharaja Yudhishthira said, "My uncle, do you remember how you always protected us, along with our mother, from all sorts of calamities? Your partiality, like the wings of a bird, saved us from poisoning and arson. While traveling on the surface of the earth, how did you maintain your livelihood? At which holy places and pilgrimage sites did you render service? My lord, devotees like your good self and verily holy places personified. Because you carry the personality of Godhead within your heart, you turn all places into places of pilgrimage. My uncle, you must have visited Dwarka. In that holy place are our friends and well-wishers, the descendants of Yadu, who are always wrapped in the service of the Lord Shri Krishna. You might have seen them or heard about them. Are they all living happily in their abodes?" Thus, being questioned by Maharaja Yudhishthira, Mahatma Vidura gradually described everything he has personally experienced except news of the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty. Compassionate Mahatma Vidura could not stand to see the Pandavas distressed at any time. Therefore, he didn't disclose his unpalatable and unbearable incident, because calamities come of their own accord. Thus, Mahatma Vidura, being treated just like a godly person by his kinsman, remained there for a certain period just to rectify the mentality of his elder brother and in this way bring happiness to all the others. As long as Vidura played the part of a Shudra being cursed by Mundaka Muni, Aryama officiated at the post of Yamaraja to punish those who committed sinful acts. Having won his kingdom and observed the birth of our grandson, competent to continue the noble tradition of his family, Maharaja Yudhishthira reigned peacefully and enjoyed uncommon opulence in cooperation with his younger brothers, who were all expert administrators to the common people. Insurmountable eternal time imperceptibly overcomes those who are too much attached to family affairs and are always engrossed in their thought. Mahatma Vidura knew all this, and therefore he addressed Dhritarashtra saying, My dear king, please get out of here immediately. Do not delay. Just see how fear has overtaken you. This frightful situation cannot be remedied by any person in this material world. My Lord, it's the Supreme Personality of Godhead as eternal time, Kala, that has approached us all. Whoever is under the influence of Supreme Kala, eternal time, must surrender his most dear life. And what to speak of other things such as wealth, honor, children, land, and home. Your father, brother, well-wishers, and sons are all dead and passed away. You yourself have expanded the major portion of your life. Your body is now overtaken by invalidity, and you are living in the home of another. You have been blind from your very birth. Recently you have become hard of hearing. Your memory is shortened, and your intelligence is disturbed. Your teeth are loose, your liver is defective, and you are coughing up mucus. Alas, how powerful are the hopes of a living being to continue his life. Verily, you are living just like a household dog and are eating remnants of food given by Bhima. There is no need to live a degraded life and subsist on the charity of those whom you tried to kill by arson and poisoning. You also insulted their married wife and usurped their kingdom and wealth. Despite your unwillingness to die and your desire to live even at the cost of honor and prestige, your miserly body will suddenly dwindle and deteriorate like an old garment. He is called undisturbed who goes to an unknown remote place and freed from all obligation quits his material body when it has become useless. He is certainly a first-class man who awakens and understands, either by himself or from others, the false and misery of this material world, and thus leaves home and depends fully on personality of Godhead residing within his heart. Please therefore leave for the north immediately without letting your relatives know, for soon that time will approach which will diminish the good qualities of man. Thus, Maharaja Dhritarashtra, firmly convinced by introspective knowledge, broke at once the strong network of familial affection by his resolute determination. Thus he immediately left home to set out on the path of liberation, as directed by his younger brother Vidura. The gentle and chaste Gandhari, who was the daughter of King Subala of Kandha or Gandhara, followed her husband, seeing that he was going to the Himalaya mountains, which are the delight of those who have accepted the staff of the renounced order, like fighters who have accepted a good lashing from the enemy. Maharaja Yudhishthira, whose enemy was never born, performed his daily morning duties by praying, offering fire sacrifice to the sun god, and offering obeisances, grains, cows, land, and gold to the brahmanas. He then entered the palace to pay respect to the elderly. However, he couldn't find his uncles and aunt, the daughter of King Subala. Maharaja Yudhishthira, full of anxiety, turned to Sanjaya, who was sitting there, and said, "O Sanjaya, where is our uncle, who is old and blind? Where is my well-wisher uncle Vidura and mother Gandhari, who is very afflicted due to all her sons' demise? My uncle Dhritarashtra was also very mortified due to the death of all his sons sons and grandsons. Undoubtedly, I am very ungrateful. Did he therefore take my offenses very seriously and along with his wife drown himself in the Ganges? When my father Pandu fell down and we were all small children, these two uncles gave us protection from all kinds of calamities. They were always our good well-wishers. Alas, where have they gone from here? Suta Goswami said. Because of compassion and mental agitation, Sanjaya, not having seen his own master, Dhritarashtra, was aggrieved and couldn't properly reply to Maharaja Yudhishthira. First, he pacified his mind by intelligence and wiping away his tears and thinking of the feet of his master Dhritarashtra, he began to reply to Maharaja Yudhishthira. Sanjaya said, "My dear descendant of the Kuru dynasty, I have no information of the determination of your two uncles and Gandhari. O king, I have been cheated by those great souls." While Sanjaya was thus speaking, Shri Narada, the powerful devotee of the Lord, appeared on the scene carrying the tumburu. Maharaja Yudhishthira and his brothers received him properly by getting up from their seats and offering obeisances. Maharaja Yudhishthira said, "O godly personality, I do not know where my two uncles have gone, nor can I find my ascetic aunt who is grief-stricken by the loss of all her sons. You are like a captain of a ship in a great ocean, and you can direct us to our destination." Thus addressed the godly personality. Devarishi Narada, the greatest of the philosopher devotees, began to speak. Shri Narada said, "O pious king, do not lament for anyone, for everyone is under the control of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, all living beings and their leaders carry on worship to be well protected. It is He only who brings them together and disperses them. As a cow bound through the nose by a long rope is conditioned, so also human beings are bound by different Vedic injunctions and are conditioned to obey the orders of the Supreme. As a player sets up and disperses his playthings according to his own sweet will, so the supreme will of the Lord brings men together and separates them. O king, in all circumstances, whether you consider the soul to be an eternal principle, or the material body to be perishable, or everything to exist in the impersonal absolute truth, or everything to be an inexplicable combination of matter and spirit, feelings of separation are due only to illusory affection and nothing more. Therefore, give up your anxiety due to ignorance of the self. You are now thinking of how they, who are helpless poor creatures, will exist without you. The gross material body made of 5 elements is already under the control of eternal time, Kala, action, karma, and the modes of material nature, guna. How then can it, being already in the jaws of the serpent, protect others? Those who are devoid of hands are prey for those who have hands. Those devoid of legs are prey for the forelegs. The weak are the subsistence of the strong, and the general rule holds that one living being is food for another. Therefore, king, you should look to the Supreme Lord only, who is one without a second, and who manifests himself by different energies, and is both within and without. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, is the use of all devouring time, Kala Rupa, has now descended to the earth to eliminate the envious from the world. The Lord has already performed his duties to help the demigods, and he is awaiting the rest. Your Pandavas may wait as long as the Lord is here on earth. O king, your uncle Dhritarashtra, his brother Vidura, and his wife Gandhari have gone to the southern side of the Himalaya mountains, where there are shelters of the great sages. The place is called Saptasrota, divided by 7, because there the water of the sacred Ganges were divided into 7 branches. This was done for the satisfaction of the 7 great rishis. On the banks of the Saptasrota, Dhritarashtra is now engaged in beginning Ashtanga Yoga by bathing 3 times daily, in the morning, noon, and evening, by performing the Agnihotra sacrifice with fire, and by drinking only water. This helps one control the mind and the senses, and frees one completely from thoughts of familial affection. One who has controlled the sitting postures, the yogis, asanas, and the breathing process can turn the senses toward the absolute personality of Godhead, and thus become immune to the contaminations of the moods of material nature, namely mundane, goodness, passion, and ignorance. Dhritarashtra will have to eliminate this pure identity with intelligence, and then merge into the Supreme Being with knowledge of his qualitative oneness. As a living entity with the Supreme Brahman, being freed from the blocked sky, he will have to rise to the spiritual sky. He will have to suspend all the action of the senses, even from the outside, and will have to be impervious to interaction of the senses which are influenced by the moods of material nature. After renouncing all material duties, he must become immovable, established beyond all sources of hindrance of the path. O king, he will quit his body most probably on the 5th day from today, and his body will turn to ashes. While outside observing her husband, who will burn in the fire of mystic power along with his hatching cottage, his chaste wife will enter the fire with rapt attention. Vidura, being affected with delight and grief, will then leave the place of sacred pilgrimage. Having spoken thus, the great sage Narada, along with the Vina, ascended into outer space. Yudhishthira kept his instruction in his heart, and so was able to get rid of all lamentation. The chapter 14, the disappearance of Lord Krishna. Sutta Goswami said, Arjuna went to Dwaraka to see Lord Shri Krishna and other friends, and also to learn from the Lord of his next activities. A few months passed and Arjuna didn't return. Maharaja Yudhishthira then began to observe some inauspicious omens, which were fearful in themselves. He saw that the direction of eternal time has changed, and this was very fearful. There were disruptions in the seasonal regularities. The people in general had become very greedy, angry, and deceitful. And he saw that they were adopting foul means of livelihood. All ordinary transactions and dealing became polluted with cheating even between friends. And in familial affairs, there was always misunderstandings between fathers, mothers, and sons, between well-wishers, and between brothers. Even between husband and wife, there was always strain and quarrel. In course of time, it came to pass that people in general became accustomed to greed, anger, pride. Maharaja Yudhishthira, observing all these omens, spoke to his younger brother. Maharaja Yudhishthira said to his younger brother Bhishmasena, I sent Arjuna to Dwaraka to meet his friends and to learn from the personality of Godhead Krishna of his program of work. Since he departed, 7 months have passed, yet he has not returned. I do not factually know things are going there. Is he going to quit his eternal pastimes, as Devarishi Narada indicated? Has that time already arrived? From him only, all our kingly opulence, good wives, lives, progeny, control over our subjects, victory over our enemies, and future accommodation in higher planets have become possible. All this is due to his causeless mercy upon us. Just see, O man with a tiger strength, how many miseries due to celestial influences, earthly reaction and bodily pains, all very dangerous in themselves, are foreboding danger in the near future by deluding our intelligence. The left sides of my body, my things, arms and eyes are all quivering again and again. I'm having heart palpitations due to fear. All this indicates undesirable happenings. Just see, O Bhima, how the she-jackal cries of the rising sun and vomits fire, and how the dog barks at me fearlessly. O Bhimasena, tiger amongst men, now useful animals like cows are passing me on my left side, and lower animals like the asses are circumambulating me. My horses appear to weep upon seeing me. Just see, this pigeon is like a messenger of death. The shrieks of the owls and the rival crows make my heart tremble. It appears that they want to make a void of the whole universe. Just see how the smoke encircles the sky. It appears that the earth and mountains are throbbing. Just hear the cloudless thunder and see the bolts from the blue. The wind blows violently, blasting dust everywhere and creating darkness. Clouds are raining everywhere with